He shielded the princess from death. Now the alien queen won't let the human depart. Elias Kane had never felt so small. Not in the physical sense. He was an average human, lean but strong. But in the way a person could feel small when standing in a place that had been built for gods. Velthara, the home of the Zyrith Empire, stretched beyond comprehension. Crystalline towers shimmered under a sun that seemed too bright, too perfect, and every surface reflected light in patterns that made his head spin. He had been sent as a low-ranking escort for the human delegation. His official job was simple: stay out of the way, protect when necessary, and observe. Simple, but he had learned the hard way that simple was rarely enough when humans were surrounded by aliens who measured time in centuries and regarded impulsive action as a flaw. Today, he was accompanying Princess Lyria during a ceremonial procession. It was meant to display the Empire's openness to new species, a demonstration of diplomacy. He had watched humans like him participate in diplomacy before, but never under the gaze of beings so far removed from human experience. The aliens were flawless, precise, their movements choreographed as if gravity itself followed their commands. Elias could not help but feel clumsy. His feet made soft, ungraceful thuds against the polished floor. The princess walked ahead, delicate and elegant, her white ceremonial robes flowing like liquid light. Her skin shimmered faintly, not from cosmetics but from bioluminescence, an inherent trait of her kind. Her eyes, two pools of violet, were focused forward, unflinching, as if she carried the weight of the empire itself. Everything went as rehearsed. The guards flanked her, moving in perfect synchrony. The human delegation followed at a distance, careful not to break formation. Elias walked just behind the princess, adjusting the strap of his small but sturdy shield pack. It wasn't much compared to Velthara's energy barriers, but it was all a human could carry. Then it happened. A loud crack echoed through the grand hall, followed by a deeper, rolling rumble. A crystal spire from above, massive and impossibly heavy, began to tilt. A minor tremor at first, hardly noticeable, but within seconds the crystal's movement accelerated. Dust and light refracted in ways that made the spire look alive, writhing toward the procession. Elias' heart froze. Every alien guard froze too, but in their case it was not fear, it was protocol. They were trained to calculate, to measure, to act only when certain. In that fraction of a second, their calculations could not catch up. "Princess!" Elias shouted, and instinct took over. He ran forward. Humans were slow in planning, yes, but fast in reacting. He dropped to his knees, extending his shield pack just as the spire crashed down. Light exploded around him as the shield absorbed the worst of the impact. Elias felt the weight of the crystal pressing down, pushing him toward the floor. His bones screamed, muscles strained, but his grip did not falter. The princess was unharmed. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in shock. She had never seen a being choose risk over calculation, action over hesitation. For a long moment the hall was silent. Dust hung in the air like a cloud of stars. Then the queen appeared, her presence sudden and overwhelming. Zyrith moved with a grace that made even time seem to bend. She studied Elias with a look that was impossible to read, curiosity, anger, awe, all at once. "Save him," she ordered, in a voice that could have commanded mountains. And the elite alien medics obeyed immediately, their movements swift and efficient, removing Elias from under the spire and carrying him to a chamber designed for healing, comfort, and observation. Elias barely had time to register what had happened before he was enveloped in soft, glowing energy fields. Pain coursed through his body, but he was alive. The aliens murmured among themselves, their voices like wind through crystal. One of them, a tall figure with translucent skin, tilted its head. "Human resilience, unprecedented," it said. Elias groaned. I'm fine, really. I don't know how to thank you." They debated endlessly whether Elias' act was foolish or heroic. The queen did not speak. She simply watched, her violet eyes fixed on the human who had defied their expectations. By the next morning, Elias had recovered enough to sit upright. Alien scientists had surrounded him, scanning, probing, and recording data on every aspect of his physiology. They marveled at his heart rate, bone density, and the way his body absorbed shock. None had ever seen a creature capable of enduring such force without permanent damage. Princess Lyria returned, sitting beside him with a gentle smile. "You frightened everyone," she said softly, "even the queen. It's more than that. You showed us something new, something we had forgotten. You have risked yourself for one of my family, and in doing so, you have changed the way we see humanity. You remind us what it means to act without guarantee, to protect without reward. You are a symbol." Towers shone, light refracted through crystal, and the alien world moved on. But something had shifted. A human had intervened in the perfect order, and the galaxy had taken notice. The princess came to him again. "The queen will not let you leave," she said softly, almost hesitantly. "She believes your presence here is necessary, even if you do not understand why." Humans were free. Humans could choose. And yet in that moment he realized that Velthara did not intend to let him leave, not because they could not, but because they could not afford to ignore him. That night, as he lay resting, Elias thought of his home. The streets of Earth, the smell of rain on concrete, the laughter of friends. And yet somewhere deep in him he felt the stirrings of something new. He had crossed a threshold, a line between the expected and the impossible. Humans had always survived. They had always adapted. And now, on a distant alien world, one human had reminded an entire civilization what it meant to act for others. Elias closed his eyes. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had become something the Veltharans could not ignore, a living proof that humans were capable of courage that went beyond logic or calculation. Princess Lyria visited him daily. At first, she came quietly, almost shyly, as if unsure whether her presence was welcome. Elias welcomed it, if only because it reminded him that he was not a specimen under study. "You've been awake for hours," she said one morning, hovering by his bed. Her robes shimmered in soft hues, and her eyes, always calm and measured, now held a faint curiosity. "I do not think I have ever seen anyone endure so much and yet remain unbroken. The aliens patched me up well." He offered a small smile, but it faltered under the lingering soreness in his limbs. She studied him for a moment. "The queen will not let you leave." But the queen refused. And here, on this distant world, a civilization measured in centuries insisted he stay. Over the next few days, the truth became clear. He was under what Veltharans called royal observation. The term was polite, but its meaning was unmistakable. He was not to leave until the queen decided otherwise. Alien scientists and diplomats observed his behavior, tested his reactions, and recorded every detail. Yet it was not a prison. The rooms were comfortable, designed for healing and rest, with light that shifted according to mood and temperature controls that suited humans. Still, Elias felt the weight of invisible chains. Princess Lyria became his guide to this strange life. She explained the empire, the hierarchy, and the intricacies of Veltharan politics. Humans had always assumed that advanced civilizations valued strength and technology above all. Here, the opposite was true. Velthara valued control, foresight, and perfect execution. Chaos was dangerous. Deviations from protocol were punished. Elias, by contrast, had acted without calculation, instinctively, and he had saved a life. "You do not understand," Lyria said one evening as they walked through a terrace that overlooked the city. Towers of crystal reached toward the stars, reflecting light in patterns that seemed alive. "Humans are unpredictable. They act without thinking of the consequences. That is why most species consider your kind fragile. And in Velthara, the foreign is studied, sometimes with great suspicion." Elias grew accustomed to their language patterns, their rituals, and their subtle ways of measuring loyalty. And all the while, whispers spread through the empire. The human who had saved a princess, an ordinary human, had disrupted centuries of tradition. One afternoon, Queen Zareth herself appeared. Elias had grown accustomed to her presence in the palace, but every encounter still carried the weight of awe. She moved with a deliberate elegance, her gaze as sharp as it was beautiful. "Elias Kane," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "You have spent days in our world, and yet you do not fully understand your significance." I just did what anyone would do. Humans had survived and thrived because of their choices, their instincts, and their resilience. But he had never thought of himself as extraordinary. "Your species is underestimated," the Queen continued. "Not because you are weak, but because your ways are different, and difference makes others uncomfortable. So, you're keeping me here because I proved something." Humans valued choice, yes, but to have an entire civilization see him as a teacher, as an example, it was overwhelming. Days later, a new layer of complexity emerged. Scientists discovered evidence that the crystal spire collapse might not have been an accident. Small signs suggested sabotage, a subtle shift in the structure that could have been orchestrated. Elia's mind raced. So, someone wanted the princess harmed. Elias was determined to help. He was still a human after all, and humans acted when others hesitated. "I need to understand who did this," he said to Lyria one morning. "If the princess is in danger, I won't just sit here." "And I will. That is what humans do." "Your courage is noted, but you must understand, to act within Velthara is not simple. One wrong move and the balance of our empire could shift. You are not merely a human here. You are a variable. You may assist if necessary, but your presence here is under my guidance. Do not overstep. The empire is vast, and even a human cannot yet predict all its motions." He noticed patterns the Veltharans overlooked, small inconsistencies that hinted at the conspirators' identity. Where their minds were precise and deliberate, his instincts caught the gaps, the shadows between rules. Princess Lyria continued to guide him. She taught him Veltharan logic, etiquette, and history, but she also learned from him. She began to appreciate the human ability to act quickly, to trust intuition, and to risk oneself for another. One evening, as they walked through a terrace that overlooked the sparkling city below, Lyria said, "You have changed us, Elias. Not by force, not by law, but by simply being who you are." "I just did what was right." Not because of strength, not because of power, but because of choice, because of courage, because of loyalty. He did not know what tomorrow would bring or how long he would remain in Velthara, but one thing was clear: his presence had already changed the empire, and in doing so he had changed himself as well. The galaxy was vast, the future uncertain. But humanity, fragile, unpredictable, unstoppable, had begun to leave its mark. Elias Kane had learned many things since arriving on Velthara, but the most important was this: the Empire feared disorder more than danger. Every corridor, every meeting, every moment followed rules older than most stars humans had mapped. The Veltharans believed that if every action was planned, nothing could truly go wrong. Elias knew better. He had grown up on Earth, where plans failed every day and people survived anyway. Humans adapted. They noticed what did not fit. And now, walking through the high observation halls of the palace, he felt that familiar tension in his chest, the sense that something was wrong. Queen Zareth had allowed him to observe internal proceedings. It was not trust exactly, but curiosity. He was a variable, as she had said, and variables revealed weaknesses. Princess Lyria walked beside him, her steps quiet against the glowing floor. "You are distracted," she said gently. "I am thinking," Elias replied. "The spire collapse still doesn't feel right. When things don't add up, we don't wait for proof to start asking questions." He noticed small details: who avoided eye contact when the princess was mentioned, who spoke too quickly when security was discussed, who followed rules too perfectly. Perfection, Elias had learned, was often a mask. One name came up often: Counselor Valrix. He was ancient, respected, and known for his strict loyalty to tradition. Whenever discussions turned to change or human involvement, Veilric subtly redirected the conversation. He never argued openly. He simply delayed. Elias mentioned it to Lyria during a quiet moment in the gardens. "You believe Counselor Veilrix is involved?" she asked, surprised. "I don't know," Elias said honestly, "but he's afraid of something. Humans scare him. Usually nothing serious." They reached the eastern wing to find guards standing calmly, their posture relaxed, too relaxed. Elias felt the familiar human instinct rise again, sharp and urgent. "What's happening?" he asked. "A system recalibration," one guard replied. "No threat detected." "That recalibration," Elias said slowly. "Who authorized it?" The quiet alarm stopped. Moments later, Veltheran engineers arrived, confused and alarmed. Their scans revealed a subtle alteration in the spire's balance systems, not enough to cause immediate failure, but enough to weaken it over time. A delayed disaster. The Queen was informed immediately. Counselor Veilrix was summoned. The council chamber was silent as Veilrix stood before Queen Zyrith. He did not deny the changes, he justified them. "Your Majesty," Veilrix said calmly, "the Empire is drifting. Humans bring chaos, instinct, uncertainty. If the princess had perished, the old order would have been preserved." "You were willing to risk her life," Elias said, stepping forward, "because you were afraid of change." The Queen dismissed him from the council, not with punishment but with removal. In Veltheran culture, loss of voice was the greatest consequence. Afterward, Elias stood alone on a balcony, staring out at the endless city. Lyria joined him. "You saved us again," she said quietly. "I didn't save anyone," Elias replied. "I just noticed the problem. Our people stopped looking for problems long ago. We trusted the system. They break because they stop listening. You chose to listen. Humans don't like being kept." Somewhere out there was Earth. Loud, messy, beautiful. Humans did not conquer with force, they influenced by presence. "I'll stay," he said finally, "for now, but on my terms." Who reminded an ancient empire that survival was not about perfection, but about choice. And the stars were watching. Elias Kane did not sleep much that night. Velthara glowed outside his chamber, endless towers of crystal reflecting distant starlight. The city was calm, orderly, and beautiful. Yet beneath that calm, Elias felt movement, change spreading quietly like water finding new paths. By morning, the palace was different. Whispers moved faster than light along the corridors. Servants spoke softly. Guards stood straighter. Council members avoided one another's eyes. The removal of Counselor Veilrix had shaken Velthara more than anyone admitted. A truth had been exposed. Perfection had hidden decay, and a human had revealed it. Queen Zyrith summoned Elias at dawn. The Grand Assembly Hall was filled, counselors, scholars, commanders, observers from allied systems. At the center stood the Queen, radiant and composed. Princess Lyria stood at her side. Elias walked forward alone. He felt thousands of eyes on him, not hostile, not welcoming, curious. "Elias Kane," the Queen said, her voice calm and clear. "You came to Velthara as a guest. You remain as a question." "You did not act because law demanded it," the Queen said. "You did not act for reward. You acted because someone was in danger and you could help. The question is whether we are. You were offered power, you refused. You were offered safety, you questioned it. Tell us why. And what gives us hope? Not to teach us technology, but to remind us of choice. On behalf of humanity." "Yeah," Elias replied. "Humans are being noticed." Elias watched as humans struggled with Veltheran perfection and Veltherans struggled with human unpredictability. Arguments happened, mistakes were made, and somehow progress followed. Princess Lyria spent much of her time with Elias. "You are leaving soon," she said one evening as they stood on a high balcony. "Yeah," Elias replied. "Humans rotate. Keeps us sane." Queen Zyrith stopped him before he boarded. "There is something you should know," she said. "Many feared you would weaken our empire. We don't always get things right." of an empire that changed because it listened, of a species once called weak that refused power and chose responsibility instead. Humans did not conquer Velthara, they influenced it, and that frightened the galaxy far more than any weapon ever could, because when humans arrived, systems changed, rules bent, and choices returned. Elias Kane returned to Earth as a quiet hero. No parades, no statues, just a man who did what was right. But in distant stars, whenever someone hesitated between safety and action, they remembered one simple truth.